So today marks the beginning of a new chapter that I've been waiting for a very long time. I think that there's projects and ideas that we hesitate to bring into real life. There's fear and doubts and just excuses. And this is my first step into what I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to shelf my conversations somewhere because I've been living on the road for almost 9 years and I've gotten to meet a lot of amazing people and I have a lot of deep and meaningful conversations, but I kind of just keep them for myself and I don't put them anywhere. So I wanted to start this. This is called Timecapsule. It's my podcast show and this is the first episode. It's called Timecapsule because I started doing this thing a few years ago where I would spend time with people and ask them 3 questions that I felt like were relevant to their life at that moment. And I'd write it in my phone, and then a few months or years later, we would reflect on it together and see the growth and evolution of what they've done. And I want this show to be an expansion of that. So the first episode is with Nainoa, and I'm so excited because I've admired his art for years and years and years. And we got to meet briefly in Iceland, and I got to show him around a little bit there, but I just love so much about what he's doing. We spent this time talking about how he balances his passions. He's obviously a top tier filmmaker, but he produces his own music. He scores his own films, which is the dream. He loves surfing and jiu-jitsu, and we kind of just nerd out about all these things, but also figure out how we balance these things and find the importance behind these activities. And I also dug into his Layers project, which is his own passion project, which is kind of portraiture in a filmmaking context. And he just spends time with people that he finds interesting and makes these incredible little 2-3 minute films. And we just totally geek out about it. I get into like the sound design and the colors and the lenses and the selection of the people he chooses to make these films on and the importance of why we choose these passion projects. So I hope you like this. I don't really know what it is yet. I'm obviously very nervous. This is the first episode and I really want your feedback because I think there's lots of room to grow, and I plan to do this for a while because I just love conversations and questions and unpacking and unraveling ideas completely. So with that being said, please enjoy my first episode of Time Capsule. Let's just jump right into it. I feel like typically how these things go is very like basic and linear in the beginning. And I think that's cool and very normal, but I think just due to my nature, and I actually think yours too, let's just jump right into the deep end here.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So I have a favorite question. I have like an all-time favorite question. And it's my favorite thing to ask because I think as a result of asking this question, it kind of indirectly unpacks the basic stuff anyways, right? So your life up until this point, if you were to kind of condense it down to like 3 bookmarks or milestones, like what would those marks be, those moments of change or the names of those chapters?
I think let me work backwards. Let me start from past up until now, because I can think of those already. The first one was probably going to be quitting a job that I had at a hospital before I started doing filmmaking. Up until that, like I felt very lost. I had no, I feel like purpose really, in my life. And I was working at a hospital. And I happened to pick up a GoPro, and that turned into a bigger camera. And then I was like, oh man, this feels like something I could be good at. And so I was like, screw the job. I'm going to go do this full time. And that set me on the journey that I'm on now. Second one would probably be moving to New York to work with Beautiful Destinations. It's probably second chapter, because there was a time, there was a chunk of time between quitting and being freelance and not having anything, like, it was a grind and it wasn't really, limbo for sure. And then having my first taste of like opportunity of like, oh, okay, this is, I got this cool rad opportunity offered to me and I'm going to take it. And so that was like, okay, from Hawaii, moved to New York, big city, and travel the world. And that was chapter 2, I'll probably say.
Yeah, that's a pretty big leap from 1 right there. Yeah.
And then chapter 3, I mean, after doing all of that and even coming into, going back to freelance and trying to rediscover a creative voice that I think it's always evolving and developing, but the third chapter I'd probably have to tie it to being married, getting married, honestly. There's a bit of like maturity and like giving up myself when it comes to devoting to a marriage and like being in a relationship. It's impacted my career. It's impacted like everything of like my growth as a person. And I feel like this next chapter, I'm living it right now. It's like there's a cool stride with lots of positives, obviously lots of negatives, but I think overall,
Would you say you're naturally pretty like individualistic? How easy or hard is it for you to be like collaborative or be part of a team in maybe in the marriage sense as
yeah,
well?
I think I've pretty much grown up very very self motivated, self kind of, I don't want to say centered, but yeah, individualistic's a good word. Um, I've considered myself an introvert, so I love my own alone time, and the inner imagination and stuff going on is like always been comforting to me. So up until I think like being a married devoted man now, it's like always thinking about myself, and now okay, so it's like thinking about others, thinking about my wife, thinking about the way that I serve the jobs that I'm working on, the projects and the things. Like it's like I want to be serving rather than taking. I think that's been like a big shift for me, and it's been showing in I think in my work at least, hopefully. And I just want to continue that.
I love that you use the word serve. That's like a really powerful and very specific word to be using in that context. Let's add some more color to that hospital chapter.
Yeah, that was on Oahu, where I live here now. I'm from Molokai originally, so that was even moving from a smaller island to Oahu. There's a lot going on here. Um, yeah, that hospital job was again, I was aimless, fresh out of high school, just got to make some money, and I didn't go to school. This was in 20, I want to say 2013, 2013. Yeah, so actually I worked there for 3 years. I was, right out of high school, 2013 through 2016. So I was there for 3 years. Um, yeah, and I think even I was still so young. I feel like I was developing still as a person, and to have that kind of be formative in my young adult life was interesting for sure.
It's kind of crazy that these are your 3 points that you started with, because they're probably three exact points out of my own storybook. So I kind of want to ask questions based off of how I've unpacked my own past. So let's go straight to that GoPro area. I always love starting stories there because to me that is the genesis of all travel filmmaking, right? Which is could be synonymous with the Sam Colder era.
Well, the GoPro days, I think for me, I mean, I grew up doing so much fun stuff. I mean, in and around the ocean, the islands are hiking, cliff jumping, surfing, like so much fun stuff. So I think I randomly just I picked up a GoPro because I was actually part of a MLM back in the day, like a long time ago. And so like all the big thing was like these guys would film themselves and like talking to the camera and doing all this cool stuff. And I was like, I want to get one and kind of do that. So that's why I picked it up. And then I started actually like shooting stuff and found a lot of fulfillment in just that creative art, like act of doing that, rather than talking in front of a camera and like what I intended it for. So I found that, and honestly, it was like the first little spark of like, ooh, this is. I felt a fulfillment in making something, because I think up until that point, like I was just kind of flowing like a leaf in the wind kind of thing, and I played sports, but um, it wasn't much. I think, yeah, just that feeling of creating and like a bit of gratification there.
So much less pressure during those times just to have a GoPro, hit record.
Dude, it was so fun. And so like we just constantly we would go out and cliff jump, we'd go hiking all the time, and I'd finish the day and come back with these little edits and like post those to Instagram. And um yeah, it was innocent, like that was the stuff that, oh, it was just so fun.
Was there like a defining moment in terms of, let's go like post production, because I'm recalling from my own memory, like the first time I ever made my first film, like I sat down, taught myself Premiere and all that good stuff. That was a probably one of the biggest moments in my entire life. Was there something like that for you where you're like, I think I'd love making films?
Yeah, actually, the first time, yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of vague to me, but I can remember like the feeling of like, I remember sitting in my little studio apartment. And I had my old 2012 MacBook Pro and Final Cut, and I just like the feeling of placing clips together and then like putting a soundtrack under it, exporting it, and I was like, oh, I have a finished like video. I remember that, and that was like, then sharing it was also part of it, you know, like sharing it and getting, you know, a little bit of feedback. That I think that encompasses the whole, makes it complete. um and yeah, that's funny you bring that up. That's like that, I feel like I still get that feeling, you know, when you finish a video.
I think that moment for me was so profound because that was probably the first time in my life the internal dialogue was like, I'm really proud of myself. Like, I really like this version of myself. That was like when a switch went off, and I'm just like, I just need this feeling more in my life.
100%. It was, I didn't necessarily, I don't think it was like proud of what I made. I was just like glad I did something. It was yeah, it was valuable to me for sure. And, you know, I think up until that point, yeah, everything was based off of like academics, or like I wasn't performing good in school, or like my, you know, based off of athletics and relationships. And so like to have something completely disattached from that, that was like me, it felt like me. That was so cool.
Yeah. And then when we move a bit to the New York side of your story and beautiful destinations, what was what does that chapter mean to you? Like, I feel like you've talked a lot about this in other shows and conversations, but I'm curious, like, looking back now, what importance that chapter had for you.
It was growth. It was probably, I mean, it's sentimental to me still now. You know, there were so many cool memories and opportunities that, you know, gave me. But I think, and the overall theme was still kind of discovery, you know, discovering my voice as my own artist, as my own filmmaker, as a person. Um, it was interesting again because we all, like, the BD style was developed by, you know, a few people, and I think that kind of seeped into how I viewed myself as an artist, as like, okay, this is what I am. This is all that I, or like, you know, like this is what I'm doing. And it kind of, I feel like it boxed me in a little bit. Not them per se, but what I derived from it was that I'm this travel filmmaking guy, and this is what I do. Um, and so I think it prompted, it challenged me, because afterwards, you know, I kind of tried to stay in that same space, but it just wasn't clicking and it wasn't lining up for me. And so I had to do a lot of kind of post reflection and, you know, rediscover why it is that I wanted to make films in the first place. And that came down to wanting to tell human stories. And I think, you know, up until today now, it's like that's what I feel like I'm wanting to stride in a little bit more. And yeah, I'm trying to fill more of my career with that. So I think overall, that chapter of my life was formative. It was exciting. It was growth. It was like new everything. And yeah, overall, so fun.
I think from an observer, I feel like that's such a luxury to be able to afford the question, like, what is my creative voice at that time in travel filmmaking, when we were all just still picking up a camera and learning how like ISO works. You were like, what is my voice? The rest of us was
Sure.
like, what is shutter speed?
You know, what's funny is like I still remember I would just still crank my shutter speed when I was at B. Like that stuff was, it was more just about, again, like doing it, and sometimes it wasn't technically right.
What were some of the more impactful people during that chapter for you? Like, where you were venturing and meeting a lot of different types of creatives and personalities. Like, who left a mark on you?
I want to say, I mean, I owe a lot to Sam Calder. I mean, he's the reason that I got that opportunity, like just from, you know, doing stuff together and the relationship we had. You know, it pretty much it snowballed after he did that for me. So that was formative. I think the friends that I met at BD also, like, there's too many to count. but they've all, and still to this day are still parts of my life. Corey Martin, like we still work together a bunch, and he's incredible. And then also I began working with Sam Potter, and like that's another chapter I feel like I could kind of like isolate in my career. And like those projects with Sam were like rugged and everything that we could have wanted to get out of a travel like series like we did together. And so
Well, let's spend a second and unpack that for a second with Sam. Like, you guys knew each other before?
we were acquainted actually. So he's from Kauai, and he was really good friends with a cousin of mine, or my cousin. And so we met before either of us were actually doing any kind of filmmaking or like content Instagram stuff. Um, and then we'd been acquainted there, not till years later once I started doing film, and he started doing his own films also. We kind of reconnected while I was working at BD, and just got along really well. And we're just like, hey, I was at a point in BD where I wanted to, we were telling stories on creators. And so we did one project together that I kind of spearheaded and told his story on Kauai. We spent like a week or two together, just, totally just doing anything and telling his story. And that was like the start of, I think, our really close friendship, because we were like, whoa, this came together really well. He loved being a director, kind of like in front of the camera and like having that presence. And I was like, I love this. Like I could do this all day, being behind the camera and just making cool stuff. And that kind of just set the tone for what we were doing after. Since then, like we've done a handful of just rad stuff.
I feel like that's really rare. That's like a film soulmate where you guys' styles like complement and harmonize so well.
Yeah, and I think what was important was like, it was even before working together, we had that friendship. It helps so much, And there's also those challenges that comes from working with people you're close with and like have that comfortability with.
Yeah. Well, you guys achieved a pretty high summit together with the story with the Emmy. Can you share a little bit about that?
That is all Sam. He has been focusing a lot on, I think, telling again these deeper stories on just stuff that is, close to him and resonates with him. And our relationship now is, again, I think I love being behind the camera. I love DPing. Him as a director, he has a vision. I love being able to, kind of execute and help out with that vision. So we won an Emmy recently for his last film called Hula is Hawaii. And that was basically an encompassing kind of love story or love letter of hula and his just reverence for the Hawaiian culture. We were able to, I was able to DP that also with Corey, and he helped out. Drew Longest did the editing for it, small crew, small team. And I think what kind of blows my mind is how he's always been kind of the big picture visionary, I want to say, out of the people I've known. And the fact that he's been able to like submit to the Emmy Awards and have people actually recognize it's like a true testament to just like his kind of will. The boy can, he's got a cool determination there. But yeah, it's been an honor. I mean, I love still working with him too, and I was lucky enough to get an Emmy for one of the projects that we did together.
Yeah, I feel like once you guys kind of got into that Emmy space and that word was being used, I feel like from the outside it was massively inspiring for the industry and the community, because it was like, oh, we didn't know this mountain existed.
No, for sure. I think even for me personally, I like, again, Sam has his ways, and it's like, bro, this is a totally cool new mountaintop almost. It was really, really sick.
Has it changed anything for you? Has it had a tangible impact?
I think it helps a lot with potential, opportunities that have been coming in. Just to have that, I think, again, like kind of recognition and label. It's, as much as I don't want to place too much value on it, it kind of has a place in a career, at least. And then obviously I think with like friends and people who will joke about it, it's like, oh, you won an Emmy now, you know, like it's interesting. But yeah, it's really cool.
It's kind of the ultimate hero's journey arc from Island Boy to Emmy, you know?
It's an honor for sure. Again, I've a part of me, so it's weird. I feel like sometimes it's imposter. It's like, oh man, who am I to deserve that? Yeah, I'm just this kid making films.
I have a theory that that feeling kind of, because everyone who experiences this feeling of imposter syndrome feels the need to remove it. And I feel like it's such an important side of one coin that needs to exist to have that machine that we have that drives us to keep going higher and farther and faster.
I think one thing that's been helping me has been like, who am I to downplay what's been given to me? Or like, who am I to downplay what's been like I've been blessed with? Honestly, because I see it as that. It's like, if it's a gift, like you dishonor it by, trying to downplay it for what it is. But no, you shouldn't make it above you, but give it the recognition it deserves, honor it by just, yeah, allowing it to, yeah. So that's been helping a lot.
Did you ever read that that final page in The War of Art in that book?
Been a minute.
You basically just read the page off of that book, but it's basically like if you don't and I'm summarizing here, if you don't accept or embrace the gift that you were given, you kind of like damn the angels that look after you.
Whoa, I love that. I remember I read The War of Art years ago, but I kind of came to this, I guess, thought in my head from like my walk with faith now. It's like, and I think those all tie together, it's like kind of crazy that I'm looking back on where I was looking for all of that to where it is now. And it's like, man, yeah, makes sense.
I think I think I've had a very similar journey with faith and just the outlook of that, because what the words you're choosing are really resonate, and I feel like that's almost a whole another conversation in itself. But I'm sensing like a very strong theme in everything that you're talking about, like within, BD and Sam, and even being newly married and stuff. I feel like collaboration is probably like a very big word in your life. What is your relationship with the word collaboration? Because you're doing it creatively, personally, emotionally.
That is the next chapter. That is the chapter I am in right now. It is the kind of overall, I think, thing that's pulling me forward to trying to prove to myself too much of like I can do it myself. I think that's a weird thing I've wrestled with. Just we've been, taught that doing things on your own was a sign of strength or a sign of adequacy, and for a while it helped me develop a bit of confidence. Like, yeah, I could do it on my own. But then I realized, like, if I look at my course of life, nothing I've done has ever been on my own only. And whether it's from, people helping me or like, giving me these opportunities, like I can't take only all the credit for myself, and wherever that person came from too was sent, whatever you want to believe. So collaboration is me now embracing that and also searching for it rather than seeing myself as the provider of it. It's like, no, there's so many things at play that I, need to recognize now. And I think with maturity, that's been the biggest thing is I need to take kind of a bit of a step back from myself and, see what value I can bring to other people. Like, how can I serve? How can I be, you know, providing, just value to others? And I think collaboration, even in the sense of the things that I'm doing on my own passion projects, or like the things that are kind of, again, self-fulfilling in a way, it's all about, I want to edify others. I want to edify other people. And like, there's some amazing stories of friends that, again, have come into my life that, probably I have no idea how they happened. And collaborating is, I think, the key to growth. It's the key to sustainable growth rather than depending on yourself constantly. And there's nothing wrong with it. And I think it's the next chapter of my career too, because even for a while too, for a minute, Sorry, I'm rambling now because it's all just kind of coming. um, there was a point in my time or in my career where I wanted to create an entire film, like front to back, all that was entire myself. So it was like fully shot, edited. Like I created the music, the photography, whatever, everything that went into it. I was like, oh man, I wanted, like, I was trying to prove to myself, like, I'm a creator, all this kind of stuff. And I did it, and I was, expecting just like a new level would be unlocked, and it wasn't. Yeah, it was just like, hey, you did it, cool. And that kind of it shook me a little because I was like, okay, I did all of this, but really it was probably again self-serving. It was just trying to boost my own ego.
Again, I just feel like you're reading a page out of my life book too. I got asked a question 2 days ago, and I'm taking this like storytelling program with someone that I really admire, and they asked me the question, "What's something that you used to believe that was right that you might not believe is right for you anymore?" And my answer for that was, I think there was a large chunk of my life where I had to believe individualistic and independency was this end all be all solution, you know? And I think for a while it does serve us well, but I didn't realize that I was wiring myself so concretely and in a way of thinking and being that when it came time to let people in emotionally, creatively, professionally, in all the ways, that it would be like them trying to open like a metal vault, right? and and now it's like trying to make space for people in my life.
That's
And
so good. I think as artists, again, I mean, as creatives, it can be, and that might come from a place of because we isolate ourselves a lot in order to kind of draw,
we romanticize it.
we to try to draw out those pieces of work or art that we want. And so it's so easy to develop that mindset. I think that's something common in a lot of artists or creatives.
With under the umbrella of like collaboration, I'm curious about one aspect of your career because I have experience following somebody around with a camera, documenting everyday life and stuff. So when you're on tour with Illenium, you know better than most people as well that there's a lot going on. There's family, there's production, there's personal, there's PR, all the things. And you're there trying to document these moments, being a fly on the wall, but also being a personality and being enjoyable and all these things. How does collaboration look in that sense to get like the end result films that you get? Because I love your Illenium mini
Oh,
docs.
thanks, man. I think my mindset around that has always been that it is not about me. Like I have always been focused on. I've tried to at least be focused on Nick and his story, and the reason I feel so kind of I've developed almost like a personal attachment to that, and I think when you meet those people who you connect with, like you it's almost like their passion seeps into like yours in a sense, and it becomes this again collaborative thing. But uh my first and foremost, anytime I was around that project and those people, it was about him, and it was about kind of the vision that I wanted to help tell his story, because I just connected so much with who he is and what he's been through and where he is now. It was honestly like golden ticket for like any creative wanting to tell like deeper stories. I was like, man, this is from the start, and they're also just such incredible people. I wanted to do that. Like it was very fulfilling for me.
What does that creative process look like behind the scenes? Like, is it them just being like, whatever your output is, we're happy with, or how much of a hand do they
I
have
got
in it?
so lucky, man. Like I was so blessed meeting them because that entire team, and I think it's a testament to their success now, is they've always let whatever creative players that they've brought into their projects, like they gave them the full run. It was like they curated these people to come through and just do their thing. And so when we first connected, that was part of what they wanted from me. They liked my work. I loved their music, and they were just like, do your thing. And it was never, there was, a little bit of direction here and there, but it was never a job. Honestly, like even to this day too, like there's so much freedom that they have with, letting me kind of come in and document what I think would be cool. And it's just the most fulfilling kind of creative relationship you could ask from anyone, when you're just letting people do what they're good at. And I feel like that's the most collaborative experience.
Is there something within that long format storytelling world that you're trying to grow in still? Like the next time you're in that position to tell a longer story, is there something you're gonna be excited to try? Or
It's interesting. I think that comes down to the art of like story finding too, of like what's the new unique angles, and how can you metaphorically or visually just represent those ideas. So I think I've been yeah, there's a few things I'm really excited to try to push the needle that I haven't done with them before. And um I think it's interesting because overall, the story stays the same, but it reveals itself to you in totally different ways depending on where you're at in life. Like, it's such a reflection of where you are in that moment, where they are in that moment of their story, and it's like that's constantly changing. So there's never a stagnancy of, okay, what's the creative here? It's like, okay, how do we just like, you know, how do we just dig this thing up because it's there, and it's always changing. So I feel like every piece that I do now is also kind of just like discovering these new ways to tell a story.
I feel like that's such a veteran way to look at things, because I feel like in past experiences, even being a beginner myself, when you look at storytelling and maybe you're nervous or you just don't have enough tools, you look to plant things for a good story, right? And then just the veteran is just like, give me a brush. There's a story ready here. You know what I mean? Like it's
I don't consider myself a veteran by any means, but like, yeah, I think after you do it enough, you'll realize like like there's only so you don't need to be doing as much as you think you do, I think. And allow it to be what it is. And I think that's, at least from a documentary standpoint, when you're watching something unfold, I feel like that's always been so successful for me.
Well, if you didn't know it, that is a sign of mastery already, because as you get older, let's use LeBron as a metaphor for this, as he gets older. Actually, he's a terrible metaphor because he's still a freak athlete. But as you get older, your body doesn't work the same as a young athlete, right? So you find smarter and better ways to work to get a better output or the same output. It's the same thing with this in storytelling and filmmaking. It's like we don't have to spin our wheels just to get one type of result. We can work less and ask better questions, and instead of asking more questions to get something that we're proud of. I feel like you've touched on a few things that go under the umbrella of passions: film, music. I want to talk about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a second. Where does that fit into your life? Because I feel like I have an equivalent, new, irrelevant passion to my filmmaking that indirectly ties in. So let me hear what that relationship with Jiu-Jitsu is first for you.
I think well, over the last couple of years I've developed an unhealthy kind of obsession for it. It's weird, man. It's kind of like I love surfing too, and I think in the jiu-jitsu community there's a very common thing of like people like surf and jiu-jitsu go together for some reason. For me, the first time kind of like just getting into the world of jiu-jitsu and experiencing it unlocked like a new level, I think, of physical, mental, like just under or like challenge, everything. It was it's a cool chess match. I see it as a physical chess match with someone else. And I think the parallels also between like learning, like developing the art. It's an art form. It really is. And so I think, again, for me as a creative, the amount of creative ways to submit someone and get to that end goal is like it's addicting.
It's crazy that you would even bring up the word chess, because that was my comparison. I am That would be an understatement. The way you described unhealthy relationship is, there are days where I'm like, I don't need to be spending 7 hours every single day playing chess.
Grandmaster, bro.
Well, that's the thing. It's probably the same conversation with you. We're just like, where's the top of this mountain, and do I want to, I mean, is that my pursuit? Is that my purpose on this planet? Because I have an obsession thing where it's like, I'll pick up something and then I'll dedicate my whole existence to it, but it might not be the most productive thing to be investing into.
I think that's where brilliant minds like they go, you know, like they find those things and they just get hyper fixated, and then that's how you develop just this crazy talent for film and photography like yourself. It's like,
Yeah, it's true. I feel like I learned that that's not a trait that everybody has. For some reason, that was an assumption of the world I had growing up, where I'm just like, doesn't everybody want to invest 48 hours a day into something like I'm over here playing chess like a crack addict.
I went through a chess phase too when I started when I was watching Queen's Gambit.
Yeah, the same. I started there, but I just didn't let off where most people dropped off at a healthy point.
No, I was just gonna. So I'll say this: imagine you're playing chess in a physical sense with another, you know, opponent who's wanting to do the same thing, and it's like those same, I think, you know, brain activities that are firing to, because there's no single or one right way to get to a position or a move. It's like, oh man, it's endless.
Well, I think where things kick into high gear for anybody finding like a passion for the first time is like the first stage is almost like reps. Like I'm playing 1,000 games in like a week. That's like too many. But you're learning fast ways to fail, right? What you're doing. Like with BJJ, it's kind of like I'm finding 100 ways to get kicked. And then either most people, probably 90% of people drop off there and they're like, this sucks, I suck, I don't want this. Or they're like, I need to learn more, right? And then for me, like after I got to a certain point where I was like, okay, I think I've hit my ceiling of self-learning. I need to figure out like how to learn from other people. So then I started searching for a coach, and then I started watching like grandmasters play. And then it's like I'm approaching it like formally in a way where school didn't even have this
Whoa.
impact on me. I was just like, where can I find more resources to learn to grow at this thing? And it became an obsession. And then at some point, you're just kind of like, am I still a filmmaker?
Well, that's the beautiful thing, is it's like that's not all that you are, right? It's like you're a multi-dimensional person. You're human with like and I think the more we kind of contain ourselves to those labels and identities, it's like, man, no, you're so much more than a chess player. You're so much more than a filmmaker. You're so much more than.
I call that the Instagram bio complex, where it's just like, how can I fit my life existence? Yeah, what is my 9 characters of existence here? So on this list of passions for you, you got film, music, jiu-jitsu, surf. On that list of passions, is there anything I'm missing?
Man, I still love traveling. I still love of people and cultures and food. But yeah, if it came down to the things that I'm spending my days doing, it's probably filmmaking, jiu-jitsu, music, and being a husband, loving my wife, and trying as best as I can, being, you know, as serving as I can to other people.
I feel like all the crafts that you've just listed for yourself, those could be lifelong endeavors of just one craft, like learning filmmaking could take forever. How are you balancing all these heavy learning crafts?
I'm still figuring it out. I mean, I try to wake up early. Yeah, I think it comes down to what's the priority on that list, you know. First and foremost, I think I have a priority to my wife, you know, to others. And I think even when I take others as the priority, I can apply that into filmmaking. I can apply that into my own passions when I want to. Even if I'm training like jiu-jitsu, like it's a chance to still speak, or, you know, do life with other people. It's a chance to you know, just serve.
There's an art to overlapping all these things, especially within a relationship, right? Just because like you have a partner that maybe doesn't do jujitsu, but sharing some part of that with her is what's the goal.
Yeah, I think it all combines, like it all comes together, because it the way if it helps me out, then it helps me also be a better person to her. And it's like the balance, it's not so much of a balance. I think it all just kind of accumulates. And sometimes if I feel like, hey, maybe I shouldn't, I don't treat anything too important over the other. If I feel like, you know, I need to be putting a little more time into my marriage and that relationship, I'll give up jiu-jitsu. I'll give up like some filmmaking for a little bit, or vice versa. If that's going really well, then maybe I can, you know, sit down and make some music when my filmmaking's like good. So I'm just kind of, I'm trying to be a little more obedient to others, and rather than, you know, forcing my own desires and agenda into it, I found that always just like makes other things crumble and fall apart.
I feel like that's a very surfer approach, the way you describe that, where I feel like if you're a beginner, you don't know what you're doing, or you're anxious, you're going to the wave, it feels like, as opposed to waiting and enjoying until the wave arrives. And I feel like that's exactly what you just described. So I feel like with passions, at a certain point, it's normal for someone's mind to cross like, is this or could this be a business? Should I leverage it? Should I monetize it? What is that with you with all these things? Obviously, you're a filmmaker and you're making a career out of it, but like, what's your relationship with all the other things?
I think well, on the topic of kind of like thinking of business ways out of what I'm doing, I've been applying to my filmmaking at least now. Again, that idea of how can I serve and how can I serve more people, because that, I think when that's the first and foremost priority, the money will reveal itself. Like you'll be provided for no matter what. So and it's funny, I've been overlapping a lot of jiu-jitsu with my film. Like the last 3 projects have been on like someone that has ties to jiu-jitsu and also, filming and stuff. So I think actually at some point I'd love to like, I think I'm going to stay. I'd like to be in it for the long haul with jiu-jitsu, and, God willing, I become a black belt or whatever, and I start teaching whatever. And I want to, man. Like, I think I love it.
I admire that, because the equivalent conversation for me is grandmaster. And it's like, but I also know that takes like a master's degree worth of dedication. And it's like, is that really the end goal? I don't know the answer today, but like, that's the question I need to be answering.
You can't see the dots going forward, right? But I think if you continue the trajectory that you're on with the fervor and the passion that you have for it, like that's where it goes. Like, and you don't really need to worry about, hey, are you going to get there? It's just like, man, you lay the brick, right? And eventually you have a wall. So I think if I'm laying these bricks of what I'm still doing now, like the wall will get there, and I'm not really worried about that, but I'm worried about how I place the brick now.
True. I think there's something to be said that you got to make sure that these are not good bricks, but bricks that you want to be building, because you might accidentally build something that you didn't necessarily want to live in,
No, that's fair. And I think but that comes with being in alignment with your, your purpose and what you feel like you're called here for. And so, like, from that standpoint, I don't really, at least lately, the conversation is like, am I doing the right things? It's more, okay, tell me where to go. Like there's a part of that.
I feel like we could talk about passions all day, because I honestly see the parallel because I worked with a boxer before, and I that's my only exposure to martial arts professionally, but I was drawing parallels between martial arts and chess all the time. It's literally the mental and physical version of each other. It's the way you dissect and analyze everything. I think that's a whole nother conversation. But what I really wanted to get to into today, I feel like was like the main event of this conversation, because I'm so excited, is your layers project. So before you even describe and say what it's all about, I want to take a stab at my theory on why you created layers.
Sure. Okay.
I could be horribly wrong. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like something like layers would exist to someone like you, because you've spent a better chunk of a decade serving people really well, creating people's brands, giving their voices some volume and color. And I feel like at a point when, you demonstrated early in your journey, you're asking questions like, what's my creative voice and stuff like that. But after having so much experience in the metaphor I call, which is like grocery shopping for like the soul, where you've gathered so many different types of things in life, you want to really figure out what you're trying to make with this, what you're trying to cook with this, right? And I feel like there's like a very deep version of that metaphor where it's a really big question. It's not like what project do I want to do? It's like, what is something that contributes to the grand purpose and vision of my existence, right? And I feel like layers really reflects that without even knowing you that well.
Wow.
It looks like that from the outside, because that's how I approach a lot of my filmmaking process. And when I watch your films, I'm just like, okay, there's intention between the voice, the aesthetic, and the execution, the time frame. It's all there. I dissect these types of things that I love watching, and I feel like layers exist because, one, you need it to be sane, probably, to have an outlet that's like, this is under Nai's umbrella, you know what I mean? And the other thing is, it's an avenue and a road that you can have people come on with you, and you can choose who goes on that road trip with you. You know what I mean?
Dude, I think you've said it better than I ever have. No, seriously, that was the grocery. Yeah, dude. No, everything. Yeah, you nailed on the head. 100%.
Years.
I could even touch on that because I think I had it in 2020, you know, like in during COVID, the formative ideas of it started in COVID, where it was literally, I was like, man, what can I do to flex these, you know, kind of get the creative muscles still moving, because I wasn't doing much. And it wasn't until, you know, a year, 2 years, 3 years later where actually just sat down and did it. And now it's like, yeah, it's become that avenue of like, man, this is what I've been wanting to make.
Is there any DNA of follow your Stoke and experience in layers? What is, can you, well, first of all, can you kind of define or talk a little bit about those other two um, chapters in your life and then how it ties into this one?
Oh man, I've actually never put these two together. But it's funny you mention it. I think because Follow Your Stoke was, for me at that point in my life, it was a reflection. It was a diary entry of like just all the things I was doing, and it was just literally to get what I had in me out and, you know, share it in a way that nobody else was telling me how to do it. Like it was just fully me. And that's where the whole Follow Your Stoke kind of idea came from. It was to celebrate all the fun stuff that I was doing. And then now, I mean, I think that's where the DNA overlaps, is like I'm now celebrating these incredible stories of people that I think have come in through my life and just, you know, I think deserve it. But at the same time, it's still nobody else telling me what to do. Like it's such a, again, collaborative process. If I think of Follow Your Stoke as like the individual thing that I was doing, now Layers is now the collaborative version of that. And we're making these things together. And I think, again, I think that's where, man, the vertical of it is, it's going to be so, it can be so much further than what Follow Your Stoke ever could have been or was, like, hopefully.
Like you said, it's kind of a reflection of who you are at that time, because I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, Follow Your Stoke exists because you were someone who needed action in your life. You wanted to go and do things and say yes and take life by the horns. And then, you know, I don't know what the duration of experience in that series, but like it sounds like it was there because once you collected enough experiences, you're kind of dissecting what it all means to you, and then it would make natural sense. This is basically the Batman trilogy, right? It's like the current Layers one is kind of like everything's nuanced. All these experiences don't mean the same thing. They're not weighted the same. They hold different colors and voices and stuff. And I think it's a very clear representation of your journey. And
dude, all your words, you're just speaking truth in life into me, man. It's so accurate, bro. No, it's good. No, and I like what you say. It is a reflection of, you know, where I am in my life at the moment. And what's exciting is like, well, who's to say what it's going to look like in a few years, or like what it's going to continue to be? Because I'm not tied to what it looks like now. Like hopefully, you know, I just want it to continue to grow and be prosperous somehow and serving more people. So
I think you don't give yourself enough credit, because the way you have an outlook on life and how you introspectively unpack your what's coming into your life is definitely signs of like mastery. You're not trying to fight or force anything. I feel like you're allowing things to flow, allowing things to come to you, and you're not asking necessarily why this here, but you're welcoming that it's here. You know what I mean? I can really hear that in your words. Like it's really prominent.
thanks, man. I could say the exact same thing. I feel like this is going so well, and you've just done such an excellent job, dude. I can't wait to see where Time Capsule goes. It's like these conversations are fulfilling for sure.
But to be honest, this is just, well, I don't, yeah, again, like chess and jiu-jitsu, I don't know, and I don't almost care where it goes. This is for me, because I want to shelf these things, because, you know, you and I have had very blessed lives in a short amount of time, where it'd be a crime not to document it and shelf it and even share it if that's what people want. But
Love it, man.
We'd be damning the angels if we didn't, right?
So good.
So within your Layers series, you've done 5
Yeah.
episodes. I'll just rapid fire through them. So episode 1 was with Connor, and he's an ocean shooter, photographer. It felt like a love letter or poetry to the ocean and art itself. And then episode 2 was Sojourn, and that felt like your love letter to jiu-jitsu, but it was shot interestingly in like a group environment. And I'll ask questions later about that. But being someone that's an introvert filmmaker as well, I'd be like, how did that go with different people in the room. And then episode 3 was with Dan, cliff jumping. And I felt like this was your piece that had the most, like the look of it had the most unique flair. Like it stood out aesthetically quite a bit. I mean, they're all like visually and it's stimulating. But and then episode 4 was Angela MMA, and you metaphored it through the theme of fire. Episode 5 which was released like a minute ago.
Yesterday, yeah.
yeah,
Yesterday.
yeah, and that was Jasper. And would it be accurate to say he's a mural artist or just
Artist in general, dude? Honestly, Jasper is he's incredible. Yeah, he's done so much. Yeah. We can dive into that too. So much more than just a mural guy.
So when we kind of go to episode 2 and the jiu-jitsu thing, I want to know how you set that up, because obviously not all gyms are well lit and like got all this stuff. So tell me how you staged this and set it up, because there's other people in this space.
It was interesting. I think that space was actually not as bad as it could be. It's all overhead lighting over there. Some of the group environments of the class was just a top. They have just like a one straight beam over the entire length of it, and it just creates this nice little fall off, so no matter what direction you're like shooting, you have shadow and really nice stuff. So I was like, man, this is a dream.
So how were you directing and orchestrating the environment when there's like 4 or 5 or even more faces involved?
I fully treated it like a documentary standpoint. Like I was, I let the class go. I knew how it went in the first place too. Like I know Jason has moments where he's talking to others and like everyone's listening, and I have where the moments when people are drilling and like when they're sparring. So I knew what was happening. There wasn't really, I didn't stage anything for those group stuff. I gave direction of like, hey, do your thing how you normally do it. If I see something that I want to kind of, focus in on and zoom in, I'm going to tell you, but like, just do it, let it happen. And I think I just took documentary style approach into that.
I don't know if this would be accurate, but I think this was your most experimentative episode out of
editing wise.
Visually. What was it? Yeah, editing wise. So you used a little bit more effects.
Yeah, I think I just got really wonky with the visuals on that one, or I tried my best. I don't think I'm like a very solid VFX or.
It was so tasteful though, like the stuff you did in the last act, like the fusion effects. I think you said you used.
Yeah, that was all fusion.
Man, that was done so tastefully. Where I was like, as soon as the first time I watched it, I paused. I'm like one of those people that doesn't watch it all the way through and then revisit. I was just like, boom, let me see what's going on right here.
I think I've been learning about what kind of sells. What's an accurate representation of like when VFX are done well. I'm not like I don't consider myself an expert on it by any means. But I think what really kind of helps sell it. I've been obsessed with film emulation, as I'm sure the industry has like, clearly gone that direction. I like it. And I feel like beautiful grain helps tie together any kind of like VFX like in such a nice way, so as I was just like, man, I took that whole project was just an opportunity for me to just like dive into fusion. I was like, what can I do that fits the aesthetic that I want to create with this, and just try to just throw stuff on a wall and see what sticks.
Can you touch quickly on the music choice in there, because I felt like that was one of the most unique angles of the film?
My professor would always say that I look at you guys and, you may be wearing a white belt, but I see black belts.
Yeah, that was Flume and Moderat. I still, dude, I don't care about using copyright-free music. I hear music, I want to create to it. I don't make money off of these. I'm like, I don't care if YouTube flags it. Like, that's, as long as it's all viewed, it's totally fine to me. And the music choice, I think it was representative of like a bit of the chaos and opportunities to make something that typically is seen as an aggressive sport. But so there's kind of 2 acts in Sojourn, where the kind of beginning part is really aggressive and like it has that kind of grungy industrial Flume feel to it, where it can be this chaotic and like hard aggressive thing as an act, as jiu-jitsu in itself. I
was going to say, does it represent what it's actually like to be almost like being submitted, where it's just like, oh, my ears are ringing right now, like
everything's coming at me and like I got to think on the spot. It's hectic, it's chaotic, and I wanted to represent that in the first act, but then towards the end where, or I guess it was more towards the middle and ending of the beautifulness of it, the gentle, like the kind of flowy aspect that jiu-jitsu has, because we changed the pace there. We learned that in Jason's story, it's not just about creating these hammer jiu-jitsu guys that are just like killing people, but it's about just ministering and like creating just good people and like doing proper life with people. That's his way of connecting with others. And so I feel like there's two distinct types of jiu-jitsu. It's the guys who do it day in, day out, and destroy their bodies and want to compete and want to have that winning mentality. And then there's the everyday hobbyist who does it because they just love the art and they love the acts of it.
Yeah, it's like, are you fighting or are you healing? Like,
it's a really multifaceted art, I feel like. So the music kind of, I wanted it to reflect that.
And on episode 3 with Dan, you did arguably the best match cut I've ever seen on the internet. Like, dude, so how did you do that?
And pulling it off and coming out safely. That commitment is saying, I'm going to do this to the best of my ability and not hold back and not let anything draw away from what this diet is going to be.
I think when it comes to actually directing and shooting it, and I was just trying to find common threads. That's what I'm always trying to link together my scenes, link together my entire film. Like, what threads can these be connected by? And so, especially in cliff diving, I think with Dan, and he can attest to it, the repetition that happens to get a move perfect. Like, it's so. Maybe I'm only realizing this now, but he spends so much time perfecting the littlest movements of his body. So the repetitions that he's going back up and down that cliff like 30, 40, 50 times to hit that same dive. And I think it just naturally came. I was like, it's like, this is what you're seeing. This is what I see, like, regardless of where the environment is that we're cliff diving. Like, we did it at a waterfall, we did it at into the ocean. He carries that into every situation. He like that same repetition, and I tried to do that, and I think it just naturally came. I was like, hey, I'm gonna do this in every place that we go, and I kind of had that intention of of match cutting, intercutting between almost. And so it again just came together.
That's a sign of mastery on both sides. I mean, for you to have the footage but to also find it is a skill in itself.
I found that it does, like, it reveals itself after a while. Like, I didn't really intend, but once it's in DaVinci and like laid out, I'm like, okay, it's showing itself to me.
And at 55 seconds, the jump shot, you guys had some FPV in there.
So Nick, I've worked with a FPV pilot. His name is Nick Yee. Absolutely just incredible. Probably one of the few in Hawaii that do as good of a job as he does. He's a friend. So I approached him. I was like, hey, I have this passion project with Dan. I think he's friends with Dan too and work together. So he was gracious enough to be a part of it and crush those FPV shots again. And for me, the collaborative effort, I think this piece might have been the most collaborative I've been on out of any of the Layers series, in terms of who I brought in. So Nick, I let him run with his drone shots. I was like, man, I gave like a bit of my own thoughts and direction of like, this is what the feeling I'd like to capture. You determine what that looks like. Came back with that footage. I was like, beautiful. Every filmmaker's dream. And then, I also approached a music composer friend of mine by the name of Zan Griffin. So all that music was handcrafted, curated, created by him. And it's the same thing. I'm giving my just like creative treatment to what I envision it to be, and then let them kind of translate it. And how would they, put this into their own work? And he came back with that track. I was like, I have nothing to say. Like, I was just like, this is perfect. Let's use it.
I'm noticing that you're treating all these people the same way that you'd probably want to be treated on that.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, it's like, here's a little bit of direction, take it, don't take it, but like, wait, I mostly trust you because you're good.
That's the reason I wanted to hit you up. You know, I love your work.
Do you want to get into Jasper in the new one?
Yes, please.
Right off the bat, I noticed something that, like, I don't even know how many seconds in, but you used a different graphic font right out of the gate. Like, yeah, that's something new. It's very like, I don't know what director style that would be, but immediately I was like, oh, here's a new font.
I don't know.
Nine.
I downloaded it off of like a film pack and I was like, I'm just going to make it my own somehow and tweak the color a little bit.
It felt good. It felt sophisticated. It felt tasteful.
I thought it was nice because of just the way that I had that intro happen of like the pan down. I wanted it to have, you know, something to, his first voiceover comes in. I wanted to create like a little, you know, kind of stop and look point and then get into it.
Yeah, I love that static opening, just the power of him walking from stage left. And
same thing. We showed up. I didn't know what I was going to shoot. I was like, hey, let's try this out. And that became the intro. Yeah.
Keep going and walk us through your thoughts before I kind of like pinpoint things.
Jasper's I mean, I don't like to play favorites, but in terms of where I creatively was able to, like, I think hit new things for myself, like as a creative, like his probably had the most out of any of their films that I've done. The kind of metaphorical visuals of like the paint rumbling and the internal turmoil and his imposter syndrome, like all of these things that created little textures and layers to his story. I was like, I want to tell this as in a really different way that I have done before.
Sometimes I don't feel like I deserve the praise. I don't think I'm as good as people think I am. So there's a lot of internal turmoil.
And so I accomplished that with you know, the slow motion of paint splattering on a speaker and
oh, dang it, I was gonna ask and make a prediction. I was gonna make a prediction because I was like, I had two questions. I was like, one, what did you film that? Because if you didn't, it's okay if it's stock footage, but I needed to know. But in case you did film it, I was like, did you put paint on a subwoofer? Because I wanted to.
I took this speaker and put it. I just put some Saran wrap over it. I blasted a light through the Raptor on 240 frames at 4K, and then I actually, what was fun, I hooked it up to my computer and I wanted to, another little Easter egg, but I played my music to make the splatters because I was like, oh, I want to see just to have that, you know, and like nobody else is going to care, but I played my music and like.
I saw that and I was like, I immediately need to ask because I'm not, I didn't want to preface it by asking if it was stock footage, but I was like, this is like something Apple would buy. You know what I mean? The screen painting shot at 115.
Yeah, that was fun. I had help with that actually. So in that warehouse shoot, my buddy Nick Cribbs and Chris Kaufman, just got to shout out them. They showed up. I was like, I need some help. You know, I have this idea of, you know, doing these kind of painting on the lens shots. And that was accomplished just from, I went to Home Depot and they have these, I'm pretty sure it's like clear plastic. I'm not sure if it's plastic or some kind of poly glass. I had him hold it against the camera lens. Had Jasper, I covered the camera with some trash bags so that it didn't get all splattered, and I just had him.
Growing up, that now is everything.
That shot was like a standout shot for sure. That was so satisfying. Did you use the same lens for this as Dan's?
I did not.
Okay, what did you use for both of those films?
So it's changed a lot. So like I've shot 3 of those episodes on anamorphics. Connor's were shot on some Vasins, but Dan Warden's and Angela's were shot on Atlases. So Atlas Orions. And I was lucky enough to kind of work out a cool relationship collaboration with Atlas to help make those episodes.
How would you describe the characteristics of those lenses or like what we're seeing? Because for some reason, even in the industry, I wouldn't even have the vocabulary to be like, what the heck is this and why do I like it so much?
Kind of anamorphic D-squeeze. Like it feels like what you've seen movies, you know, done on, and at least in that CinemaScope type of aspect. For me, I enjoyed working in that space for their films, mostly just because I think it brings a level of, I hate using the word cinematic, but like there's, you know, like how when you see a movie and you know the feeling, it's got like nice fall off. It's beautiful. Like the edges are soft. And so I loved using those for those 2 pieces. For Jasper's, and I think it was, again, just reflections of where I am and my point of career of like wanting to play around with visually aesthetic, like the aesthetic of a look. I had at my disposal for Jaspers, I had like vintage Leicas to shoot on, and so I wanted to take some of the digital edge off of that sensor, and I think it came out really, really pretty, and I love the look of those.
So tell me about the voiceover direction and the music, because for music, when the keys came in, I found that really powerful.
And how it saved my own life. And I can see the positive impacts that it can have on communities.
So yeah, I guess starting with music, I mean, it was hard. I didn't really come into it knowing what like type of music or like the sonic identity of this one to be. I didn't have anything actually. It sat around for a little while before I even got inspired by it. So I actually interviewed Jasper first. We sat down, and usually before these layers ones we're developing the voiceover, I usually do like a pre-interview or something just to explore like, hey, what would your message want to be? Like, what's the thing we can kind of focus in and select for your story. And with his, we really didn't do that. We just, I kind of, I know him from Jiu-Jitsu, so we've trained and stuff, and we've talked on the mats and all this kind of stuff. That was pretty much the only like pre-direction I gave him. It was just like, hey man, I have this layers thing. I kind of explore why people do what they do, and I'd love to do it with you. And so, yeah, when we sat down to do his interview, I already knew, he's an artist. I was like, if you've seen his art, it's really, it's pretty unique. There's a lot of bizarre and cool, like quirky textures to it. And so when I wanted to approach him and the questions that I had, I was just like, man, where does that come from? What does your creativity mean to you? And like, how has art been, formative for you, and what's like it done for your life? Because clearly, we do things for as many reasons as, like his was to heal. His was like because he had this troubled, kind of stuff growing up. And I didn't really determine that until, I met him, and then we talked about these things.
That's so interesting. I am obsessed with voiceover work and the process behind it. I would have thought, because of how concise and well put it together was, that like it was word for word, like prompted.
It was lucky. I think Jasper has a very good way of communicating. We sat down, and I think it's the environment that we place ourselves in. I wanted it to feel intimate, and so like it was just us sitting in his studio. It started off talking story, and then when we got to those deeper questions, he was able to just like accurately and beautifully speak it. The reason here's a little funny thing. The reason why it has that effect on his voice, I kind of did. I went into it like knowing I wanted to kind of tweak or do something interesting and unique to his voice, but I also messed up my shotgun or my microphone recording for him, so it was like clipping a little bit. It was very low centered, so his highs, it wasn't a crisp just place on his mouth. And
Do you
I was
think
like,
the mass majority would recognize that?
not at all, probably.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
But just being so close to it, I mean, like, it's like we're the closest to it, and I was like, man, this sounds garbage, when it probably would have sounded totally fine. But I was like, oh, how can I manipulate this? How can I make it sound a little nostalgic or even explorative, or intimate at the same time? And I just kind of landed on that tinny voice, boxy, phone, almost like vintage record player effect on his voice.
I love it. I'm a sucker for nostalgic. I feel like that must be like the time we were raised.
Sure.
I feel like whether you're a filmmaker or not, we just have like an affinity for nostalgia.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we think about early morning cartoons and just like the old music we used to listen to. It hits that part of our brain.
Is there a scene in this film that we wouldn't know a lot about in terms of the creation process, or one that you're particularly proud of?
I definitely am. I mean, I am probably most proud of the paint shots, and just like that texture. Dude, I remember when I was actually editing this, it came together maybe a month ago. I'm sure too, when ideas are hard to kind of like bring up, and you need to be patient, you need to wait for it. That was like fully what happened with this piece. I had all this really awesome footage, but just no idea like how to put it together. I had his voiceover kind of structured out, and it was just one evening I was like kind of just laying pieces, like things started to come together. And when I went, like, I try to again show and tell voiceover to visuals sometimes, and his when he starts talking about like sometimes you have to get the bad work out before the good work comes, I pictured it in my head. I was like, oh my god, this is where like the bloom comes in. Like there's like that the flower growing, but it's the paint splatter, and it was just like boom, everything kind of comes out. And like that, just once I had that, I was like, holy crap, everything else, I don't care what about it. I guess that's like the highlight to me was, yeah. And then even the when he talks about the internal turmoil, like that just came together too, because I have these when I played the volume low enough, like it would just be paint, the rumble right before the inspiration comes, and right before everything starts exploding, it's just like the little rumble. I wanted to kind of expand that little moment into his internal turmoil, his imposter syndrome, and all this kind of stuff. And like those are probably the most excited things I got about from his film.
I think there's more people that need to hear things like that, because what you're describing is the metaphor I use is like brown water. You like turn on a tap, you got to let the brown water come out before the clear water comes out. But like what you're describing with your revelation or your epiphany moment is that I think we like glorify and romanticize the idea that like after we make something, we have to make it so quick that there's like an urgency behind it. But there's like an art to letting things like marinate and sit and stew. And I feel like no one even really talks about that, because that's how the best ideas come.
I think that's when like you start to pull the magic out of creating, is when it's just, you treat it like a treadmill, and like you need to feed the algorithm, and you need to make something. And I think there's a bit of truth to both though. There's so much of a benefit of, just doing the work and just getting it out, regardless of whether you think it's perfect. It's the fact that you just made it is important. But also at the same time, it's like if it's something that when the work is ready, when the art is right, like I don't know if you've read The Creative Act yet by Rick Rubin.
Of course, Rick Rubin is creative Jesus.
That's exactly, is like it's the art's timing. Like sometimes you have to just take a step back. Sometimes you have to let it do its thing.
I love when people share anything that relates to stepping away from the thing that you naturally want to lean into or step towards. That shows patience, mastery, and I just feel like that's something that needs to be talked about more. Do you feel like after these 5 episodes, it's evolving into something more? Do you have more clarity about what Layers is or will be?
I think what's interesting is I think with each episode, like something new comes out from me. Like I think I discover something new about my own creativity and my like the process.
Can you give an example?
The closest example would be the way that Jaspers came together. I don't think I've ever felt that level of just like, I remember once the edit like came together, I stood up and started pacing my room. I was like, holy crap. Like I felt it was like something like literally like just shocked through me or something. Yeah. And I was like, I think with each episode, like, I'm not to say that's going to happen every time, but and once I make myself more available to it, I'm hoping to kind of just continue that same flow and structure. So I think hopefully in the future, again, as long as I can keep doing these, that would be so fulfilling to me. I'd love the opportunity to potentially get funding behind it, sell it or something, or become something that I can create a livelihood out of, because the main thing was this is what I want to be doing, and if there's a way where I can continue to turn that into something that sustains and is beneficial for multiple people and a lot of purposes, then that's the best thing I can hope for it to grow into.
I believe it's a matter of when for you in Layers, because I feel like it's one of those things like our love for filmmaking. It's going to be there regardless of money or whatever. It's just like I'm always going to make.
Thanks,
Yeah.
man.
Do you feel like you have a specific process for selection? Like, who do you want to invest all this energy and time into? How did you choose these 5?
It comes one at a time, honestly. Like I have a bit of a, I've sat down before and wrote out like, oh, it'd be so cool to work with these people, and these guys do inspiring things, or this woman like does these cool stuff. It's really, I just kind of think about what I'm interested in and what I want to learn more about, and who I believe like, you know, has awesome stuff to say, or just like a cool story. And luckily, like the more I share it, the more I put it out there, people have been so receptive and supportive and awesome at like, oh dude, you should, you know, let me connect you with this person, like she'd be rad. And again, it inevitably I'm the final say. I have the, you know, the creative decision there.
I feel like if it's anything similar to how I go about even just who you spend your time with in general, it's like you always have an idea, but there's always, and it's always going back to this like voice, this feeling, this compass that you have inside of you, where it's just like this time. I wasn't thinking about this person necessarily right now, but the timing just seems too suspiciously good.
Yes. Yeah.
Be like, to deny this or to reject it, be like, I think I just need to say something. And then that person's like, you couldn't have asked at a better time.
Well, dude, what's crazy is that actually happened with Angela. So Angela Lee, as a former MMA champion. So I learned of her story. I've known of her story for a long time. You know, she's been a world champion for, you know, over 7 years. Recently, last year she retired, and I've known of her story again for a minute. And then I noticed she like followed the Layers film series already, and I was like, oh man, I have to at least ask. And so luckily, yeah, well, I asked her, and she got back to me and was just so down for it. And like I was coming from a place of like, man, I'm just like a small time filmmaker. Like her whole story deserves an entire movie. You know what I mean? But yeah, from that, just being able to like just with hers, it came together like that, the serendipity, the timing of it. We talked about it afterwards we did a podcast, and she said like, you approached me at like the perfect timing of like, I just, you know, got out of or I'm retiring now. I have this purpose with Fight Story, which is her nonprofit for what she's doing. And like, she wanted a new message of like, different than what her total story was. It's like, it's a new chapter. She was like kind of waiting for it.
When things happen like that, you can't just shake your head and be like, oh, you'd be wild to think that is not designed to some degree. You know what I mean?
I was like, man, I'm gonna make this happen no matter what. It took like 3 months to film, like sporadically. You know, so again, between all of the jobs, like just and responsibilities that we had, I was like, I'm gonna make this happen. I don't care how long it takes. And that just goes back to, I think, Layers being the short films that they are. I was like, I need to do something that is attainable. I can start and actually finish it. There's so many projects I have that I just don't finish, you know?
I feel like Layers represents this thing to a lot of people where they have this creative output that they want to put out in the world, but they just never put anything behind it. Do you feel like you have anything to say to like people who would want to finally put something out in the world and put that energy, even though that energy output might not make sense for them?
Sure. Like, yeah, I think, well, I can speak personally in, you know, again, like I've had this idea for years, so I know the exact feeling of what it's like to like have this idea, this tangible thought, and wanting to turn it into a real thing. I think what helped that click for me might have been the shift of, rather than thinking of my next work needs to be the next best thing or the best thing I've ever done, it's instead now, what can I do to, I just saw it as a workout. I just saw it as like a creative workout, because I follow, I'm a fan of J. Cole's. He has a short mini documentary called The Off Season, and he has this cool kind of voiceover piece in it where he talks about the 7-minute drill. Like he would just sit down and write his verses for every single day for I don't know how long, whatever. He said most of it was garbage. Most of it was like not good, whatever. But it was just the act of doing it and making it real and getting it out was so important to him. And I really took that to heart. So I was like, okay, it doesn't need to be the next rap platinum hit. It doesn't need to be the next Emmy award winning film. It just matters what you're putting the pen to paper. You're just doing it. You're making it. So part of what helped that come to fruition for me was creating a attainable and tangible piece that I can create. So I thought, okay, what is that? That's 2 to 3 minute films. That's film that I can still put enough time into, but isn't going to take up years of my life. So, and that's where I wanted to operate. Some people want to do, I think, work that takes up years of their life, and that's totally on them. But for someone just needing to get the reps in, that's how I still see layers. It's like I'm getting in those reps.
That's so well put. I think that it always comes down to action, I think. Right, it's just the most important thing.
Our faith is made real when we walk, right? So like you need a step. Like you can have everything in your head ready there, but until you step, like you need to walk with it.
Well, before I even let you go here, I feel like, I mean, we've talked about so much, but I feel like it doesn't even scrape the surface because it's so easy to talk. But we have a good snapshot of where you're at in life now. My favorite thing to kind of figure out with people when I sit down and have these types of talks, if you could kind of save or tuck away one like memory or moment, like a time capsule, and relive it, re-experience it at the end of your life, what do you think that like one thing
right now? Oh, my wedding day. 100%. Yeah. Being surrounded by all of our loved ones, knowing I'm giving my life to, this person that I love, knowing I'm signing up for the challenges and everything that comes with it, the stress, the excitement, the anxiety, honestly. Dude, it was, I don't know, it's the coolest. It was, for me personally, it was the best night of my life.
That's a great answer. I feel like that's a testament to your relationship with your wife, because you have lived a story. I mean, you're only a percentage into your story, but you've lived like 10 movies. Your life is like 4 seasons in a movie at this point. And for your answer to be like the day where you married your wife, that's really special.
Yeah, and it's just made me look back more like all that stuff is cool, but what's really important, And yeah, it's cool. I'm still growing, man. I'm still learning. I'm still developing, and I think we all are. So,
do you feel like there's anything you want to like share on what's next? Because I feel like I'm at least emotionally invested in your journey. I always
thanks, man.
Like what's going on in the next few steps for you?
Still like the business and careers, like I love being able to work with, as many productions and different projects. Like I think that's the life that I enjoy right now. I'm hoping, again, like Layers isn't going to stop. Like I've already started on the next one. I think I just want to continue to be able to, again, I see it as my service to people, to myself, of how can I best provide value, and just telling those stories is so important to me, and I think it resonates with people, so that's what's the most important. I'm looking forward to keep doing what I'm doing, honestly.
I appreciate that, man. The thing that I admired most about you is that from afar, I had an idea of maybe the mind and the heart behind all the stuff that you make. But now, after talking with you, my favorite words in the world, maybe ever, are humble servant. And I feel like you're a perfect representation of that. And
not me. I'll tell you that. It's not only me there. Yeah.
I feel like your empathy and stuff comes through in your conversation, but also your film and your art.
Thank you, man. It's such a pleasure. And I want to say, I mean, best wishes. I think this is going to be such a cool endeavor for you to do with these podcasts and with Timecapsule. I'm excited to, I think just sitting down and spending the time that we have together, you've such a intellect, like understanding of things, and it made it so fun for me. So thank you for having me, man. I'm so excited to see what you do as well. The feeling is mutual. I think I'll be following your work fervently.
So if you made it this far, wow, thank you for spending all this time with me and listening to my conversation with Nainoa. If you'd like something like this, there are more episodes out now, so you can kind of find it in like a playlist order or just somewhere on my channel. But I plan to spend time talking with people who are artists, entrepreneur, people that have a different outlook on life, it's not really one certain thing that I'm looking for. I just sometimes get this feeling that I want to spend time with a certain type of person, and this is what this is all about. This time capsule episode that you've watched, I want to replicate that format multiple times. So thank you for spending time. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the other episode.